I'm usually not that much of a fan of mainstream tech outlets telling you what you should and shouldn't do on Linux because, frankly, a lot of the time, they don't really know what they're talking about. It's just utter nonsense. But sometimes the broken clock is right. And this is one of those pieces. From How To Geek, stop treating your daily driver Linux PC like a science experiment. Now, I'm gonna keep doing it, and you're gonna keep doing it. We're all gonna keep doing it. However, we all know there are better ways to be handling making really dumb breaking changes to our system. Linux has a somewhat contradictory reputation. On the one hand, it's known as a rock-solid operating system that never goes wrong and offers countless hours of uptime. If you think that, you're delusional, or you've literally just turned the system on and did nothing with it. On the other hand, it's also known for being easy to break in the wrong hands and when you start digging around under the hood. Both of these can be true, but your personal Linux PC that you use every day should be more column A than column B. It should be more rock solid than something that randomly breaks. Again, you're not going to stop doing what you're doing, and I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing, but let's talk about it. Your daily driver is not a lab. Your daily driver is not a system that should be constantly breaking, that you need to be constantly worrying about to make sure everything is still working like it should be. Nowadays, I've mostly settled into a setup that works for me. Now, if anybody else used my system, they'd have no idea what's going on. But it works for me. I know the bugs. I know what I can do on my system. I've never really been one to distro hop around. I've always just used Arch. But for a lot of people, distro hopping is a way to try to fix any problems. Anytime anything goes wrong, people just go and jump to another distro. NVIDIA drivers aren't working correctly, new distro. I don't like this plugin that's pre-installed, new distro. I don't like this random thing, new distro. And for a lot of people, that is how they first experienced Linux. I never really did that, but in a sense, I did so with a lot of the other things on my system. I swapped out a lot of tools I was using early on, modified a lot of config files, played around with different window managers, all trying to find the one thing that feels comfortable to me, the workflow that I vibe with that really feels like my own system. All of this I was doing on my main system. Big part of why for me is if something goes wrong, well, hey, that's video content. I get to talk about something. And for me, it's a win-win because I talk about the pitfall. I talk about how I fixed it. You learned something. I learned something. Everybody comes out of it ahead. Now, I did waste some time trying to fix the problem, but at the end of the day, I think it's worth it. But a much better way to handle things if you're not in this situation is the way that basically any dev that's working on a core system component has been doing for a really long time, whether that be working on the kernel, systemd, a desktop, things like that. Either do it on a second machine, understandably a lot of people don't have a second machine, or do it in a virtual machine. If you're going to change out your desktop, if you're going to try a new distro, if you're going to make some massive change to your system that you're not really sure if it's going to work, if it's going to crash something, if you're going to like it, do it in a place where it's self-contained, where if something goes wrong, it doesn't really matter. If your virtual machine breaks, yeah, your virtual machine breaks. You can either go back to an earlier version of it or spin up a new virtual machine, but your main system is still totally fine. You didn't break anything that you desperately need. And if you're a student, if you're working on that system, having your system go down for a couple of days, even just a couple of hours, might be a really big deal. So if you care about that, and I know, a lot of you probably don't care, keep your untested dangerous changes in a virtual machine, and then when they're ready, when you know they're not going to break anything, then bring them over to your main machine, and assuming nothing went bad, you now have the changes, you know they're good, and everything just works. If you care about the stability of your system, it might be a good idea to try. Most essential tweaks are cargo cult behavior. Ooh, where do we approach this one from? Because there is a lot of things I can say here. Do we talk about classic changes like how ZSH is useless unless you install Oh My ZSH and then you realize, wait, I can do everything from Oh My ZSH myself. I can install the plugins I want to use, the themes I want to use, all that stuff. You don't actually need Oh My ZSH. All that does is complicates things. And I guess it has a plugin manager, but there are lighter weight plugin managers like Z-Plug and other things like that. We can talk about modern changes like the CashOS kernel is so much better for you and it's going to make things run so much faster. And then you realize that maybe in some games it's like 1 or 2 FPS better depending on your hardware. Maybe, possibly, but it's very dependent. Then there's arguments over the best way to order your mirror list. Or how about this? You want to talk about Oh My ZSH? We can talk about, oh, don't use Vim or Emacs directly. You should go and install some random configuration set that installs all of these things that you have no idea it even installs, because that is the only way to make those tools useful. And that's just a short handful of examples. I'm sure you guys can think of a million other little things you've been told to do countless times. And none of these things are inherently bad. In fact, some of these changes might actually be better and might make your experience far smoother, might give you a better experience using the application, offer you more features, things like that. But a lot of people are sold this promise that it'll make everything just better. If you install this one thing, your life will change. But when you install it, oftentimes you don't know what you're installing. You don't know what those changes are going to be. You don't even know how to interact with the thing that you installed. This is a big part of the reason why I don't really care for Oh My ZSH, because amongst other things, it also installs a bunch of shell shortcuts. And people say, oh, these shortcuts make things so much easier. But if you don't know those shortcuts exist, if you haven't read all of the documentation, they might as well not exist because you're not using them. If you install some massive Emacs or Vim configuration, you're going to interact with the plugins that it basically forces you to interact with. The ones where it's like, okay, this is a welcome screen, and maybe if I right-click or do some basic move, it's going to open up a menu. Things like that you're going to see. But there's going to be a lot of other functionality that is just there that you have no idea is even a thing. Whereas if you had gone out of your way to add in the plugins you want, add in the plugins that you need, you're going to know what that functionality is because you went and added that functionality. Now, for a lot of these things, there is documentation. There is an explanation on what is being added, on how to use it. But don't just go and blindly install things because people say it is better. People say it is going to change everything. Test it, see if it's for you, and if it's not for you, well, that's okay. You can do things that people don't say you should do. And this also includes X11 and Wayland. I can say Wayland is a better experience, and you should use Wayland. If you prefer X11, if X11 is doing everything that you want, use X11. At the same time, people that say, oh, Wayland sucks, you should never use Wayland, only use X11, you shouldn't listen to those people either. You should try the different things that are available. If you prefer X11, use X11. If you prefer Wayland, use Wayland. It does not matter what anybody else says about your system because ultimately, you are the person who has to use that system. There's a difference between learning and sabotaging. Sometimes the documentation for a change doesn't really do it justice, right? Sometimes the only way to really understand what it's doing is to go and make that change and see what it does. But there is a time and a place for that, and this is especially true when it comes to installing your Linux distro. And I am so glad I see a lot less of this now, but every so often I see a post, I installed Linux on my family computer, help, I lost all of the data on it. Now, I get it. You're interested in Linux, you want to try it out as quickly as possible, you're really excited about this thing, maybe even gone and tried it in a virtual machine. But this was a situation that never had to happen. If you're gonna do that, make sure you know what you're doing. Best case scenario, have a separate system. Not as good of a scenario, but still a good scenario, have a secondary drive. If you can, acquire some cheap board like a Raspberry Pi and test out Linux on that. Yes, it's exciting to go and learn about Linux, but that doesn't mean you need to go and sabotage your system, sabotage a system that might not even be your own, just because you're excited to try it out. Boring Linux is how you win. So I've seen people complain, oh, it used to feel so fun using Linux, now it's just boring. Now I'm kind of used to everything, and I'm not excited about Linux anymore. And I know it's sad for your interest to change, but boring is kind of where you want to be, because boring generally means you've gone through a bunch of options, you've found a system that works for you. It's no longer exciting because you feel comfortable using it. It's no longer frustrating because you've either fixed your pain points or maybe adjusted your workflow to account for any of those issues. It's not something that you need to really concern yourself with anymore. You're comfortable, you're used to this system. It's not something you really need to worry about using. You know your way around it. It's just kind of a part of what you do now. You're at a point where in many ways your system is production ready. Now, it might not be production ready for everyone. It might not be ready for anybody else to use, but it's ready for you to use. It's a system that you're not constantly tweaking. It's something that you're comfortable using and doesn't need to change. Now, it might change. Maybe you're excited about doing some new change to the system. You want to start using Quick Shell. You want to start using a different desktop, things like that. But it changes because you want to change it. It doesn't change because you need to change it to make something work. But what are your thoughts? How do you approach your system? Do you tend to make breaking changes on your system first and then deal with it later? Do you change those in a separate machine, in a virtual machine, in a separate drive, in a separate distro? What is it that you do to approach things? I'm going to keep doing things on my main system again, because if something breaks, oftentimes it makes a good video. But for a lot of other people that are not doing that, understandably, there might be reasons to do that, to not do that, but I don't really know. Let me know your thoughts down below. How do you approach things? What are you running? What do you use? Let me know. Go subscribe as well, like the video, and if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Daily Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and try not to break things too badly.